How's it going, everyone? This is DJ Moore with a bonus episode to 2L and Back. I'm here with some wonderful guests, Ladies Who Law School, and I'm going to let them take the time to introduce themselves real quick.
Yeah, I am Haley Davis. I am a part of the Ladies Who Law School podcast, and I am a recent JD grad from OCU Law, and I am going to start very soon working employment law litigation.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Sam?
And my name is Samantha Lemke. I am also a recent JD grad, and I will be working in civil litigation starting off.
And Miss, with y'all jobs and your occupation, is this a field that y'all projected to go into when y'all started law school?
No.
No, definitely not.
Not at all?
No,
Yeah.
we both thought we might go into criminal law, and that was something that enticed us to go to law school. Law and Order and things like that. You know, the first real times that you see lawyers and things like
Making
that.
an impact.
Yeah, exactly. So I always tell her and other people, I didn't even know civil law existed. I mean, I heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was, right? It's not family law. It's not estates. It's its own whole ballgame, right? So, yeah, I think that after law school, our whole eyes were open to the possibilities that we could do, and it was no longer just criminal law that was an option, and it actually kind of scared us, to be honest. So we ended up learning about different parts of civil litigation and pre-trial litigation, and kind of fell in love with it. And now we're both going to be doing that. So I think it worked out.
Okay.
Yeah, I started law school thinking I wanted to be a prosecutor.
Uh-oh.
I know, like I didn't know, I had just no
Same.
clue. I was like, I want justice. Like, this is why I want to be a lawyer, you know?
justice
Like,
is cool.
and like, you don't understand like the dynamics of the whole system. I feel like
Definitely.
if you haven't been exposed to it in some way, and law school exposed me to everything. So after working in criminal law for a little on the defense side, because I quickly learned I did not want to prosecute people.
Yeah.
It was just really heavy for me. And, you know, civil litigation, you're dealing with money usually and not people's lives. So
Exactly.
that it just worked out better for my mental health.
He was like, money, not lives. I'm with it. But sometimes it goes hand in hand. So
Yeah, sometimes it does. Yeah.
I wish y'all best of luck on those occupations as well and y'all field, and best of luck to your future endeavors.
Thank you.
So for the audience, and especially for y'all audience as well, could y'all provide a little background on how y'all met? I don't think everybody really knows the true story of how y'all got into it and the groove of things. So just let people know how y'all met a little bit.
You want to go? Yeah. tell
Yeah, so we were following each other on Instagram
Yeah.
because there's obviously a Facebook group for every incoming 1L class, and I'm pretty sure we found each other on there. And I think, was you DM me or did I?
Yeah.
Haley DM'd me because she's way more outgoing, and we DM'd about her apartment or something. I was
Yeah,
like,
and
oh,
just, like,
that's
meeting
so
up
cute,
before,
you know, like she
yeah.
just had like a cute style, and I was like, oh, you're cute. So we kind of knew of each other, but we hadn't really talked.
Yeah.
And then at orientation on the first day, we kind of like saw each other from the distance and like just kind of
Sat by each other and then
was
friends ever
yeah.
since. Yeah.
never
Yeah.
separated.
Yeah.
I see that. I
Yeah.
see. So,
Oh, I was just going to say, and it wasn't until after our 1L year that we decided to start the podcast. So we knew each other for 6 months or so and went through our first semester of law school before we decided to make the podcast.
all right. So after the first 6 months of law school, that's when y'all started the talks of making a podcast.
I think it came up before finals. And we had kind of talked about it, about, you know, we're very into social media. Haley
Yeah.
was in marketing and all like PR and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff before. So we kind of bonded on that.
Yeah.
And I mentioned like, oh, you know, there's no podcast for law students really, other than these few that are all attorneys or graduates, or, you know, there's no actual student podcasts.
That are like in law school
Yeah.
Exactly.
documenting their experience.
And I was
Exactly.
like, well, that's an untapped market. You know,
Yeah.
I'm
Really
thinking
like,
like entrepreneur. And we were like, okay, let's wait till we get grades back, make sure we don't fail out, you know, because we can't like be giving advice.
Yeah, it was also so scary.
Yeah, and like
so
we were like, we don't
vulnerable.
want to like put ourselves out there if this is not going to work out.
Yeah.
So we talked to each other and we're like, okay, let's make a list of like names that we think are cool for a podcast, and we'll regroup after we find out that we made it.
Yeah.
To second semester.
That's important. I know it's a little difficult story for other reasons when I had to think about things after my first year of grades, but I know we had an episode about that, but we're gonna say that down the line for a little bit. So where are y'all from though, originally?
Yeah, so I am originally from East Texas.
East Texas, what part?
Yeah, I grew up in Kilgore, Texas.
Kilgore?
Yeah. And I went to elementary school, middle school, and high school, all there with the same kids.
Okay.
Yeah, so small town. And then I went to Texas Tech for undergrad. So I moved 8 hours away, all the way across the state to go to school. But it was a great experience, and I really learned quickly how to grow up, just because there were times where I was really lonely as an 18-year-old in Lubbock in the dorm, and I just remember being like so homesick. And yeah, it taught me, you know, those skills that I needed to learn. But yeah, I'm a Texas girl.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I plan to move back to Texas.
I'm from Texas as well, and half of my summers when I was growing up came from East Texas as well. So have you ever heard of Harleton, Texas?
Oh, it sounds familiar.
It's on top of Longview. In
Yeah,
Marshall.
okay,
It's like
okay.
30 minutes on top, and that's when you get into like the creepy areas of like, oh yeah, there's not a street light for like a minute, or when you need to get something out the car in the middle of the night. You're like, nah, I'm gonna wait until the morning, so I'm not doing that. So I always like to find it interesting if people have heard of Harleton. They're like, maybe, maybe not, but it's just a little small town. What about you, Sam?
So I have always like a long story when it comes
Okay.
to where I'm from. So I was born in San Antonio, Texas. So also a Texas girl, but not quite, because I only lived there for a few months. And then I kind of bounced around the US and South America until I was 14.
Okay.
And then at 14, we moved to Savannah, Georgia. And I did high school there. And then I went to a small public liberal arts school for 2 years, and then transferred to the University of Georgia. And then I ended up in Oklahoma.
So you're a Bulldog.
Yeah, go Dogs. I mean, I try not to like rub it in everyone's face, but trust me, like lately,
Yeah, you've been on the road.
yeah.
So you say you bounced around to South America, if I heard you correctly. So how much time you kind of spent out there? That's interesting.
Yeah, so my dad was in the military. So we moved down there when I was like 4, so about 10 years in South America. And we lived in Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia.
Okay.
And yeah, I think moving around so much was why it was pretty easy for me to move all the way to Oklahoma from Georgia.
Sure.
You know, just like pick up and go. I'm kind of a nomad.
Yeah.
I like to like move apartments as often as I can too, because I just like change. So yeah, that's
No,
where I'm from.
I think that's important because I was in the military as well, and the one thing that it taught me was like the cultural diversification that you get, and that you be able to explore like, oh, there is a different means to go about certain situations, and everybody may not understand that. So when you invite new perspectives, you kind of gradually walk them through it. And show them that, hey, there's other options on how to go about things. So I think that's like a great experience as well. That's why I want to kind of like emphasize on it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what made y'all start a podcast now?
I had lots of ventures into social media, from Instagrams to YouTube and blogs. I just wanted to get into that space. And then I started listening to podcasts a lot as a senior in college getting ready for law school. And we both love podcasts. She's
Definitely.
always listening to all the news, and she knows all the good ones. So we just bonded over that.
Yeah.
And it's also an easy way to just let our thoughts out. And
No, for sure. It is
like
therapy.
therapy.
yeah, no, it was. Because when we first started recording, we were like, oh, wow, like that was nice just to let it all out.
It was smiling and everything.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. I remember whenever she first brought it up to me, I was a little nervous just because, like she said, I was like, should we be giving advice? Like, what are we doing?
Are we qualified?
Right? And you had your blog, and I think that that's so cool. And I did have the PR background and I went to school for that and I knew about social media and I was like, okay, not only is there no podcast out there like this, but there's also no merchandise.
True.
And I just saw like a really good opportunity for us to make cool stuff for us and our friends. Like it wasn't necessarily going to be a huge thing, right? Like you said, it was therapy. It was for us, right?
Exactly.
Like I always said that the podcast at a point is us documenting our journey.
Yep.
And one day I'm sure we'll go back and watch it or listen to it, right? And be like, oh my goodness, what a time, right?
Exactly.
So whenever she asked me to do it, at first I was really hesitant and scared. But just like anything that is good in life, you have to push past your comfort zone and get out there and do something different, something that was really nerve-wracking.
Yep.
I remember when we first sat down to record, we were so nervous and like just talking in the mic and getting used to hearing ourselves back.
That's key.
Overall, I think just having the podcast and having this following and community has been a really great but also humbling experience.
It is humbling. I know that for me, it you have to get used to hearing your own voice, because after that first 1 or 2 times, you're like, I do not sound like I need to be on the mic. And then after a while, you kind of get that reassurance from like your peers and those who reach back out. Like, hey, I really love what you did. And everybody knows you have to start small. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
I think that's like the biggest thing.
And I also think, we had no idea if it was going to be successful, also putting ourselves out there in front of our peers and, them listening. Like I was really nervous for our own peers to listen to the podcast and like know how vulnerable we were being and knowing like they're sitting in class, they never talk to us, but they've listened to like our fears about class, and so that was also something we had to deal with. And like I said, we had no idea that it was going to grow. So I don't think we really ever had like a plan of how we just like did it to do it and see where it's going to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what were some of the pros and cons of getting it started, having the juggle class? And I know that y'all have like lawyers that come and speak, and just, have y'all ever had a non-lawyer on y'all show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone in the legal field, really, we like to interview anyone who has an impact, whether there's people from marketing, like legal marketing we've talked to,
we've talked to PI attorney in Michigan. Like we've talked to some of the most, I hate to say it, but random people, but also because of the fact that we've done so many interviews online and that we started the podcast January 2020. Like 2 months later was COVID.
Yep.
Yeah, and for your question about like the pros and cons, I guess a pro would be like we had a lot of time at home to kind of figure out how to do this. Also, we're pretty tech savvy, I'd like to say, so that was a pro. Cons, I mean, I think the cons are with anything that you're putting out on social media is like, are people gonna disagree with me? Are they're gonna be trolls? Like, and there were people like that, when we first, first started, like once we got a following, probably once we started hitting like 5,000 follows, things started to pick up like pretty quickly, and people have opinions, and so when we got someone not agreeing with what we said or something, it hurt. That was like a huge con. Like we had a time where we were like both crying, like thinking, do we have to like even do this podcast? Like I don't want to get hate. Like we're just trying our best,
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, con, definitely the banana brigade. I definitely think people have their opinions, like you said, and they love to share them with us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's Latina, but I'm a white cisgender female. I mean, I am a female, so in law, that is not the most prevalent thing, right? But people say, well, what do you know? And where do your opinions come from? And I think at the end of the day, you're right. But also, we have our right to speak our mind and say our opinions and give our advice.
The First Amendment.
Exactly.
and I think that's also a thing, like, as our following has grown, I think our followers have grown with us. And
Yeah.
then kind of like the only thing literally that we've gotten hate in the past few months was like some guy from like a T14 commenting like, this is
Gotta be a
stupid. You know, like
Always.
exactly. And I was just like, okay, you're annoying. You know, look at all these like awesome comments and you're just being the one
You're
rude
the one.
person. So
Yeah.
whatever. And now we just laugh every time
Yeah.
we get like a DM that's like,
It took
you know,
a long time
yeah.
though to get like
Yeah,
you said, it
because
wasn't always like that.
no,
Yeah.
we would literally be like,
I mean, I do remember times where we were really upset, and now, I mean, it doesn't not affect us. I still think about the bad comments, you know. My dad always says that it's like for every one bad thing, you need like 11 good compliments to, you know,
That's a good rule of thumb.
carry it out, because you always remember the bad
That is
things
true.
people say.
That is true.
And so I just try to remember that and focus on that there are a lot of people out there that really enjoy our podcast and have told us that. And just the episode we posted today was about a book that really gives some insight into what it's like to be a really high scoring, high performing 1L, right? That's what this person wrote it. And they're a professor and they wrote it from an academic standpoint, right?
Okay.
I mean, she also recommended outlining every day for 3 to 4 hours. Okay, so, you know, okay, I get it, but maybe some people can do that. Maybe some people needed that. I mean, I would have loved to know some of this stuff when I first started.
also we maybe did know, but like we weren't going to do it because after that,
Okay, you know what
and
I
that's
mean.
also like why we try to really our goal for the podcast is just help as many people as we can. So that's
Yeah.
why we really try to show like every single kind of way to study, every kind of person in any kind of field. Like we try to show everyone all the options. So in your example, like we were saying, well, guys, you know, you can do this, but you don't have to.
I mean, it's not
Yeah.
a must.
Yeah, because there's
It isn't a must.
No.
And that's why it's a great tool for so many of our
Exactly.
listeners who are like,
Exactly.
what do I do for outlining? What does that even mean? And I just think back to myself as a 1L thinking like getting told you need to outline. And I remember looking at her and saying, but I don't even know what that means. Like, what do we do? And we're just drowning together. And I think that I joke about it, but we're trauma bonded forever. I mean, now going through law
Bar
school,
exam.
the bar exam, the podcast, like there's so much that has gone on in our short 3 years of knowing each other and with so many of our friends too that are in law school with us. But it's a great way to just capture all of that and allow other people to understand like what the law school experience is like.
from
sure.
an average point of view. Like we always
Yeah.
tell people like we're very average students.
We're not at
You know, like
Harvard.
we're not,
No, no.
yeah, we're
You
not
know,
like
we're not
at a
we're not
T20.
outlining for
Yeah,
3
we're
to 4
not
hours
doing
a
the
day.
outlining. Yeah,
No.
we use Quimby. Like I'm not.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm never gonna say.
Student
don't
Data,
use-
yes.
Yes, literally. Trust me.
In this lesson.
Yeah, and we're never not gonna say that too.
Yeah.
We just want to be open and transparent. We're not gonna ever lie and say no, like don't use the
And it's
supplement because
unnecessary.
like why hide the ball?
Exactly.
And that's the thing about the law profession. I think it's hiding the ball a
lot
lot.
of the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And we're just trying to
Unhide the ball.
ball.
and that's definitely true. Playing keep away is definitely a thing you have to learn that it's going to be disguised. It's not going to be outright like this is what we're not trying to teach you. It's like, oh, now you're learning that. Okay, now I can tell you. And it's like, why you just didn't tell me that
In the
beginning?
first place.
Yeah, it's like when you're learning the black letter law for the bar exam and you're like, wait a second. I had to read how many cases for this one doctrine?
And that in itself is still flustering. It's
Yeah.
still mind-boggling. And I think the term trauma bonded was like one I have to keep in my pocket because I was going to say it. I think it was the best thing for y'all to go through these situations together because not everyone feels like they have a friend or sometimes like I know I'm naturally can be a loner or an
Yeah.
introvert, but I still love being around people at the end of the day. Some people think I'm more social than I actually am, but people don't know I have to hide in a cave and get some of that energy back.
Of course.
So trauma bonded would definitely be the term that I'll be using moving forward. So how did Ladies Who Law School name originated?
Honestly, we had a long list of just like podcast names like lawyer ladies who are lawyers. You know,
we were just like kind of saying a few things, and I remember we were riding in the car, and I was like, "What about ladies who law?" And it just came back.
Yeah,
like a few weeks later, I was like, "What about ladies who law school?" And then we were like, "Okay."
And then we're like, "Okay," because that can also be ladies who law eventually, because we also. I think once we started seeing a following, we always knew that we weren't going to just give it up. We were always going to grow it and always keep it, because we knew that it was like we had a hold on this market. And like we had to keep on to it. So we were thinking ahead, I think.
Absolutely. And I think Ladies Who Law is something that was always in the back of our mind, because what comes after Ladies Who Law School? You just go out there and law, am I right?
Maybe a sneak peek action. So what would be some of the key things y'all would do differently when y'all knew that y'all was going to law school, working on your courses, classes, doctrinal classes? Because we all know that our first year classes are fixed for us. What were some of the things you would do differently looking back at that time? Or this was during the pandemic for y'all as well. So what would your advice be if there's not a pandemic, since it's not a pandemic, for somebody who's just looking to do the same thing or something similar?
To start a podcast, or just okay.
I know that was long. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think to start a podcast, first you need to find out what you're into. I think there's certain markets out there, and you have to be really passionate about whatever you're going to do, because it's really easy to fall off. So I remember something we read at the very beginning was like, if you can get the first 10 episodes out, like you're doing a good job. And when we did the first 10 episodes, it was like super awesome, just like they said, right?
We're
so it just kind of grew from there. And when the pandemic happened, I know it's not supposed to be pandemic times, but now everything's online. We use certain apps that help us Zoom video, aka podcast audio, each other from across the world.
And I don't think had the pandemic not happened, we wouldn't know about all this technology that we have now, like that we literally use every day for podcasting and
everything, scheduling.
I think the pandemic was obviously horrible, but also like for business purposes it was like great.
It was a technology boom.
Because also when everyone was locked down, you just had the internet and your computer and your phone, and
people were listening to our first few episodes like on repeat, and that was kind of crazy to hear, because some of our first episodes, I know we were like, oh my gosh,
I never
don't even listen to our advice.
Why was we talking?
I can't stop saying like.
Right? And we get messages every day. They're like, I just started from the beginning. I'm on episode like 30. And I'm like, God. You just listen to me like shaking, sweating. Like we were so nervous when we first recorded. We were in the OCU main campus library, little room. It was like a podcasting room, and that's like where we recorded for the first time.
It was so tiny. It was like as big as this table.
There's no AC.
That's why we were
AC.
No,
because it's like a closet.
It was like a closet.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's literally a closet. I think it was a janitor's closet that they made into a
podcast studio.
That speaks to your testimony. For where y'all was at.
Right.
So with that experience, and then y'all know that, hey, this is something that is growing. This is something that is taking off. This is something that people love. As you stated, people are starting at episode 1 and going to episode 30 in a day?
I don't think it's a day, but it probably takes them a minute. Our episodes are pretty short. They range from 25 minutes to the rare hour one. That's like a special episode if it's long. But they just binge it and they listen from the very beginning. And then by the time they, catch up with us in real time, it's like they know us, and it's like weird. Like we came, a story. We were at Barrister Bowl, and a group of girls like came and like cornered us, and they all like knew who we were, and like I didn't know who they were, but they knew They
knew our names.
They knew our names. They knew like everything that we had talked about on the podcast. They said,
knew about our significant others and different experiences we had in law school, and like, oh my gosh, Professor Eddington said something about you, and I'm thinking like, what? Like, this is insane, you know? And yeah, it was really cool, but also that was our only barrister ball to
Yeah, I
go to.
know.
So it was kind of crazy to be 3Ls and chatting with 1Ls that had listened to the podcast and knew us. Finally getting to like meet up in person. That was really cool, you know, because at the end of the day, like Samantha said, we always knew we wanted to keep growing, and we always knew we wanted to grow a community of lady lawyers. And that's what we've done. Now we've just helped them go to law school and you know, get the courage and to keep showing up.
Exactly.
You know,
Find that niche, keep striving, let them know that, hey, there are other people that's going through similar circumstances, good or bad.
Yeah.
You know, pick one and then just start from there and keep elevating yourself, because everybody can do it. I'm a firm believer everybody can do it if you put your best foot forward. So I think it's key that they can go back and select different episodes or just go through all of them and know y'all.
Yeah.
And I wanted to piggyback off of that. How did that growth in general just affected y'all law school environment for y'all? Was it a burden for some things? Was it a, you know, privilege to be in certain spaces?
I think it was definitely a privilege, you know, to
Definitely.
be known as like, the two girls that have a podcast about law school, you know, like even if they don't know our names, like they still know who we are. And
the podcast girls.
yeah, the podcast girls. And I think the cool thing was we were talking to somebody from LA.
Yeah.
And they said that their husband was like from here.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he's a partner at this big firm, and he's like, he knows you guys.
Yeah.
Like he was talking about you guys, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what? So like,
So
it's-
even
yeah.
people in the Oklahoma City area that are in the legal community definitely know who we are. I remember I went to the Oklahoma Women in Law meeting, yearly meeting, like, oh my gosh, like almost a year ago, October 2021. Like, that's just crazy. It seems like time has flown.
It is.
But I walked in and they're like, oh my gosh, are you that's what they said. Are you the ladies who law school? And I was like, oh yeah. And they were like, oh my gosh, we think it's so cool. Like, da 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 da. And I just felt so like a barrier had dropped, and I was able to just talk with people and enjoy myself and get to know people just like I have always done and enjoyed doing through the podcast. And I think that it's affected us in a really, really great way. Like you said, it's such a privilege. But also we've worked really hard to be really individualistic and intentional with who we are and the networking that we can do through the podcast. And I think that that's also why it's been so good to us.
Okay. And yeah, I think when people come up, I would say it does create a icebreaker nonetheless, because now it's like, now I know a little bit about you from how you see me. Now you get to ask them like, what about you? And then you can just kind of just go off of there and break the ice, outside of like somebody knowing you and they just like.
Honestly, I'm such like a quiet person, really. So when people come up to me and they know about the podcast, I'm like, phew, thank God, because now I have something to talk about.
Yeah.
And like that's been the pro for me. And now I have like something to talk about, not awkwardly, probably still awkwardly, but you know.
I think it also tells you like, oh, you could be my friend.
Yeah.
I think that that's something the community has really brought us, is a lot of friends and people we've never even met or just had pizza with and dinner with or drinks with a few times, one time. You know, it's just all those intentional relationships that we've made. And it's great because these 1Ls that we met at Barrister Ball, they're going to turn around and in a blink of an eye going to be graduating. Just like you are, and taking the bar exam, right? So not trying to trauma.
It's like 4 weeks in. And I'm like, let's get to spring, please.
I get it,
like
but yeah.
It's
It's a blessing and curse. Yeah.
We were like, oh my gosh, I just want to get it over with. I just want the summer to get here so we can get started, take the bar. And then once it's there, it's like, oh my gosh, like
What did I
is
sign up for?
so
yeah, no,
intense.
seriously. Yeah. It is like, what did I sign up for? Why did I go to law school? And this is the pinnacle of everything I worked
this
for.
is this is
a nightmare.
Yeah.
Nightmare and a dream at the same time. So when y'all go and y'all look for different episodes to have individuals feature on to speak about certain topics, I know for me, speaking of icebreakers, when I was able to talk to y'all about my situation, it was like more so a stress reliever. Like I know that they heard it all. And being able to speak with certain people about being academically dismissed, about not doing well in law school, that is not an easy subject at all. No. And so what did y'all think how that came about when we did episode 106, and then how you just looked to just say, hey, this is what we need to talk about next?
Well, for your episode, I think a lot of people resonated. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of people message back and be like, is that me? You know, because you're not alone. Yeah. We have a Facebook group for the community, and people in there all the time are like, I just got my grades back. Am I going to get dismissed? And we'll just be like,
what happens if I get on probation? What happens if I don't meet grades after probation?
Because
and
no
it's
one
like,
wants to
well,
talk
guess
about
what?
it.
We have someone who went through this and they can tell you what to do. And I think when we heard your story and your resilience, we knew easy, duh. Like they have to hear this. And I think so many times we say, tell it us and the listeners, because we're listening, but so are they.
Yeah. And I think it was just so helpful, especially when you hear someone going through a situation that, like we said before, no one talks about getting dismissed. No one talks about the bad. No one wants to show off the bad stuff, right?
No, not at all.
It's like we want to show our highlight reel, and that's not like Instagram, worthy
1 minute
sometimes.
long.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no, I think it was great. And like I said, the real raw stories are like what we want to show to people, because that's life. Life is not being at Harvard Law.
No.
And doing super well and getting a 179 on the LSAT.
And being a robot for somebody else.
Right? That too. I mean, there's so many aspects of the law too that we've discovered by doing this podcast, different areas of the law. I didn't even know that employment law, which is what I fell in love with, existed until interviewing different people and talking about their experience and where they went to school and what they did. I learned about so many different areas of what I could potentially be doing. And I think that at the end of the day, so many people out there can resonate with that and we have so many episodes, 117. There's
going.
Right? There's something out there for everyone.
Yeah, whether you want to be the person who outlines for 4 hours a day or not.
Or you're the part-time student or mom or the current young associate that is just like, guys, is anyone else exhausted?
Or the pre-law student who's like, wait, the LSAT, what is that? Like, trust me.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's
just
a whole nother
today,
thing.
someone in college was messaging us and asking about, what do I do about getting a legal job? And I literally told her, I said, okay, it's time to do some research.
Yep, that's first and foremost.
Figure out some law firms in your college area and time to cold email and cold call.
Yeah.
It's time to do it, sis. And I love to be people's cheerleader, and this has allowed me to totally do that.
No,
And through that, we've formed so many friendships with like people all over the country that we like know who they are. Like we're following their journeys from when they're 1Ls and now they're like graduating with us, or they're 2Ls.
Literally graduating with us.
Yeah. And like just a few weeks ago, we met up with a friend that is in DC and he came to Oklahoma and we were able to interview him, but we felt like we had been besties for like a
2
long time, but we had
years,
never met. But like, you have your internet besties. And I think that's what the podcast has definitely let us have, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. As long as Neve don't show up out of nowhere, then y'all all right. So let's expand on that topic. How do y'all feel it has impacted others, as far as like, did somebody say, hey, I was doing this, like you said, I was thinking about criminal law, you went to employment law, so if I ever have an issue somewhere, I'm definitely calling you first. But what are some of like the stories y'all have heard, like, hey, I was going in this direction and all of a sudden I heard ladies who law school and this is the direction I took and it worked for me?
I think the number one thing we hear is that we've inspired someone to just even apply to law school or take the LSAT or even start thinking about law school. A lot of people are told growing up, like, no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or, oh, people like you don't need to be in the law, whatever.
People like you don't need to be in the law is a huge one.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that we have, through interviewing and talking with so many different people, inspired young people to go to law school and do hard things. This isn't easy.
Yeah.
And you really have to buckle up and buck up to go to law school and do this whole process. So with that, yeah, I think that we've inspired people to just take the first step.
And also by, I think, sharing our raw story of like how it, like they can just follow along. They can see it's not easy,
At all.
you know, but it is doable and you can survive, and that there's different ways to survive, and not everyone's journey is exactly the same.
No.
But yeah, I think our biggest accomplishment is just getting like people even in the legal field, you know, just even thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And I'm going to do something that y'all did with me that I thought was very powerful. And I still think about it to this day. If you had to leave the audience with an impact statement, what would that be?
Ooh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That wherever you are right now, you belong there. You've earned your place. You know, this pretty much goes towards imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of us in the I would say almost all of us,
All of us.
in the legal field deal with. And then
Daily.
just to remind yourself, like, you deserve to be where you're at.
That's such a good one. Okay, impact statement. I heard this right before I took the bar exam, and it's resonated with me so hard for the past few months. If you say, I want to do something, I want to be an attorney, it doesn't have the same impact, even to yourself, as saying, I will be an attorney. And I will do whatever it takes to be an attorney. And whenever I said you have to buck up and you have to do hard things, that's a part of that. So just whatever you do, if you want to do something on the way, say I will and do it, follow through.
And know that you belong wherever you're at.
Everything happens for a reason. And I think whenever you're really truly led to do something, or you feel it in your bones, nothing can stop you.
Okay. And y'all heard it from the ladies here. If you will do it and you belong there. So I would
Yes.
just like to take the time to thank y'all again for coming
Yes,
out.
thank
Ladies Who
you.
Law
Thank
School.
you.
Please let the people know your social media handles on where to follow you.
Yeah.
So you can find us on Instagram at Ladies Who Law School Podcast. That is where we are most active.
Yeah.
But you can also, of course, listen to us on Apple, Spotify. Check out our merch
Okay.
at ladieswholawschool.com.
Yeah.
Are we missing any others?
No, that's all of it. And yeah, come on over there and join us, because we have some big things coming up.
Please go over there and check out and join Ladies Who Law School. I would just like to thank y'all one more time for coming on to L and Back, the bonus episode, and stay tuned for the future.